So thank you guys for being with me today. I really, really, really appreciate it because you are the inspiration for this path that I am now on. Really are. And I am so full of gratitude for the love and the support I've had all these years. Thank you all. Really, really appreciate it. So let's get down to business, as Reverend Molly would say. We're going to move forward on our 12 Power series. Anyone who's not familiar, they are all up here on the wall, painted by our wonderful Grace Hollow and Sue Wan. And we're going to, just to refresh, the 12 powers are attributes or abilities or capabilities that we all have within us that are our true divine nature, that allow us to draw on them anytime we like. They link us to spirit, and they're the tools we use to manage raising consciousness. And what I mean by raising consciousness is upgrading the quality of our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, our emotions, our ideas, our beliefs. Upgrading, when we upgrade them, we actually change our state of consciousness. So we're going to start with slide 1, which is the power of power. Because that's kind of a mouthful, the power of power, I actually prefer to say the power of mastery, because it's about mastering. And I love it because, of course, it's the color purple. It's the Apostle Philip. And the location is in the throat, or the root of the tongue, which is the voice box. So every time you talk, or you speak, or you command anything, you are using this power. And it is very, very magnificent. So you need to be very aware of what comes out of that voice box, right? So we're going to start with this power, but let's go to the next one. It's the power of imagination, the ability to imagine, dream, conceptualize, and envision. And it is the light blue color. Of course, I put a little turquoise in there. And Bartholomew, and its location is between the eyes, your third eye. And it's pretty easy to remember because that's where we vision, that's where we dream, that's where we conceptualize. And these two powers, to me, go hand in glove. And when they're sprinkled with the power of faith, which is my recipe, the possibilities are limitless, to quote Lily's Light, the movie. It's really true. We can manifest our dreams, but there's some steps we have to take. How do we get there? So sometimes we have visions that we'd like to manifest, but we get stuck. Like there may be something that's just we're not getting there, right? So we say we want to buy a new house near our spiritual center, or we want to produce a film and have it distributed. And we don't know how to do that. Well, you'd use your imagination to visualize it, to help create the ideas, and then you'd use your ability to master your thoughts and beliefs so you can allow that vision to unfold. Because if you don't check in with those thoughts and beliefs, they might hold you back from realizing those dreams. Do you know what I'm saying? Okay, so a limited belief would be something like, I can't afford to buy the house of my dreams, or no one's going to watch my movie because it's silly, or I'll never learn how to cook, I'm just not good at it. Or I'm never going to have a life partner, I'm just not that desirable. Whatever you've got, it doesn't matter what it is, any little thought that's in there, on whatever level it is, whether it's conscious or unconscious, it's going to affect how you are able to realize your dream, right? So you can become aware of that defeating thought in many ways. If it's just hanging out in your consciousness, it's a lot easier to become aware of it. Because you have to become aware of it before you can control it or let go of it or transform it. If you're me, one of the ways you do that, and even in supermarkets or anywhere on the street, I just say, shut up, I'm not listening to you. I don't know what you want to say, but that's not it, get behind me. And people look at me and think, what is she talking to? Who is she talking? So, but that's honestly what I do. When I hear those thoughts come up, I stop them right there. And I go, get behind me. But there are other ways to do it. One of the ways Reverend Leon shared with us last week when it was Myrtle Fillmore's birthday, and that is to create a release statement or a denial and an affirmation. So you release the false negative belief that is not true, and then you create an affirmative statement that is true. that is your true divine nature. As in Myrtle's case, I am a child of God and I did not inherit illness. She said it over and over and over again. She wanted to remind herself that her thoughts of illness could be transformed into health and wholeness, and she could heal herself, and she did. We can all do this, and quite honestly, it's that simple. It really is that simple, I'm here to tell you. In my life, there was one really strong belief that I will share with you that I had a hard time letting go of. I don't know if any of you had it or have it, but it didn't serve me, and when I finally got tired of it, I let it go. I believed that in order to be a good person, a spiritual person, I needed to have nothing, be humble, give everything away. And so when the universe would shower me with gifts and success over and over again, I felt guilty. Is that crazy? I did. And I would open my doors and think, we're all going to the same place. Why me, God? Why do I have more than others? And I have to give to everyone less fortunate. I'd give and give and give till I was depleted over and over again. And what ended up happening was it didn't actually work. I learned my lesson a really hard way, and it was bass-ackwards. Can I say that? Because if I had known that it was not a good belief or a false belief, I could have taken care of it, but I didn't. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought the belief was anchored in truth, and it wasn't. And so one day in the midst of this really disappointing time and a bad relationship failing, I'm sitting in a bathtub and I'm doing a movie in Canada, and I'm sobbing and I'm saying to God, I'm sorry I failed. I couldn't love this person enough to heal them. How arrogant. And I heard Spirit say to me, who made you Florence Nightingale? And I was like, I don't know. And then it was, your only job is to shine your light as bright as you can. That alone is sufficient. Did you hear me? Shine your light as bright as you can. It will never hurt anybody else. It will only lift them. We have to get this. It's Marianne Williamson talks about it. I mean, she has a whole quote. I'm not going there. It says, I could keep this going. We could do a workshop. Anyway, after that, I really had that aha moment, and I started to shift the way I looked at myself, and I started to journey on the path of self-love for the first time. I started to tell myself truth. I started to get more truth. And then Rick came into my life, and I said, oh gosh, watch out, because things are getting ready to change for me. I'm going to buy myself a big house, and I'm going to start a company that I can do from home. And he's like, okay. You know, so this next part of the story is where my talk title comes from. And some of you know this story, but I felt like it was worth mentioning. So I'm going to tell it as quickly as I can. We set out to look for a new home, and we did all the steps. We visualized where we wanted, what we wanted. We wanted a view. We wanted a quiet neighborhood. We wanted to be outside of the city. We wanted a sanctuary for everyone who would enter. And we actually looked at the house next door to where we are now, because that house was on the market and ours was not. We liked that little house. It's the gray house, if anyone's been to our house right next door. We looked at it, but it was about the same size as our house in the valley, and we thought, well, this isn't worth the move. We loved the view, but it also had like a forest down below. I stood on the balcony of that house, and I looked next door, and I said out loud to Rick, I want that house. And he reminded me of this later. We went over to meet the neighbors to see how they liked the neighborhood. We looked in the window, and we saw a gutted home. Nothing, just studs and a chandelier. And I knew in my heart that this was our house. I just knew it. So I said to the real estate agent, hey, is this house on the market? And she said, no. And I said, do you know anyone who owns it? And she said, I do know him. He lives up here. He's an investor, and he'll never sell. He bought it for his daughter. I said, could you just call him and ask him? And she did. We were surprised to get a phone call the next day that he had decided to just think about putting it on the market to see if he'd get any bites. So we weren't even a contender, because a house that is gutted can't get a loan from the bank, right? So we kind of had to create, with some very special people in our lives, a miracle to let us get into, to show him that we had some funds. We hadn't actually sold our house. So we didn't have enough, but he let us in. And it was the real estate agent that let us in, we thought. But when he started taking us around the house, he had so much pride up for it. And I thought, he's the owner. My gut feeling said, he's really the owner. And I connected with him and I loved him. And I shared my whole vision for what I wanted to do to this house, how I dreamed of it, how perfect it was for us, and everything. And he took me over to the sapote trees that are down in the driveway from South America, told me the story. And he said, okay, I want you to have a piece of this fruit and taste the sweet nectar of the fruit. And I said, oh, no, I can't. And he said, you don't eat fruit? And I said, if I eat this fruit, this house is mine. And he looked at me and he laughed and he pulled that fruit off and he went upstairs and he sliced it and he hands me a piece and I said, if I eat this fruit, this house is mine. He gave me the fruit. Right after that, our real estate agent said to him, she really wants this house. Can you talk to the owner and see what you can do? And he said, you're looking at him. And not only did he let us have the house, but he carried the loan for a year while we built it. And then we got the loan from the bank. Okay, this was a miracle story, and he's still one of our angels today. He's a good friend, and we call him for advice all the time. That was the power of just one story of the power of manifestation that I just wanted to share with you today. Thank you. But I think there's a metaphor here. And I loved this when it came to me. I guess you could say the seed was planted with my imagination, rooted with the mastery of my thoughts, and sprinkled with the water of my faith. And that led to the ripening of sweet fruit in the garden of my life. I like that. So the power of mastery is vitally important. And number 3 we can go to finally. Our state of consciousness is determined by the quality of our thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and images, and their related feelings, emotions, perceptions, and attitudes. So this week, I'm just going to ask you to pay attention to your thoughts and feelings. And sometimes it's a lot easier to change our thoughts than it is to adjust our feelings. Some people work the other way. I'm one of those people that actually feels something and then has to think about it. But most of us, I think thoughts that create feelings in our body. And one of the first clues we have about a belief or an image that might not be serving us, that needs upgrading, is that we get a sensation or an emotion that we label as negative or unwanted in our bodies, right? Pay attention to that. That is a signal from you, from your higher self, that there's something operating that may be misaligned with the truth of who you are, your divine nature. So, once you identify those, you can release them and start creating new ones and then develop your Christ potential, your divine nature. And all you have to do is one at a time, right? Just one thought at a time. Don't think this is like a big job you have to do. So let's now turn our focus to creating the new thoughts. This is my favorite part. I know some people don't think they have imagination, no one in this group, but I've heard people say, oh, I don't have imagination. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? We know the power of imagination here, do we not? Yes. And one thing I learned in my research, and do I have time or do I need to skip this part? Okay, good. I identified 8 types of imagination. We can put those up there, Linz. These really surprised me, so I wanted to share it with you. And I'll talk quickly. The effectuative imagination involves a combination of existing ideas and information to form a new idea. The best example I can give of this was one that Rick gave me, so I'm calling it Ricky's peanut butter cups theory. Peanut butter cups are his favorite candy, and that is exactly an effectuative imagination. That's peanut butter and chocolate put together, right? So it's 2 ideas that you combine. The second is intellectual or constructive imagination, and that involves deliberate process, taking a definite idea and then researching all the possibilities. Use this a lot in philosophy and in politics and probably lawyers, get creative. The third one is the one that we most think of when we think of imagination, and that's imaginative fantasy. It involves generating new ideas from scratch that may or may not be rooted in reality. So these things are usually inspired and can create art, can create songs, can create poems, stories, whatever. The fourth one, and this one is the one that really surprised me, is empathy. Did you know that empathy requires imagination? I never thought about it. So if you're an empathic person and you don't think you have imagination, that is not true. Because it requires imagination to put yourself, to allow yourself to feel what someone else is going through or what someone else is thinking. You have to be in that imaginative, creative state in order to do that. And sometimes by knowing someone, you're even inspired to maybe create a cure or a drug or some kind of product that would help millions of people. And it may not even be anything that you could use, but you've been inspired because you felt somebody else's need. Or a writer who needs to develop characters has to learn empathy because he has to be able to write other characters, so he needs to feel who they are, right? Isn't that amazing? I thought that was incredible. Strategic imagination is number 5, and that involves the ability to envision multiple possibilities and to weigh the possible risks, benefits, and outcomes. For example, someone who's an avid planner, didn't know this either, is likely someone who has a strong strategic imagination. That would be Reverend Stacy Macris Ross right there. I was reading it going, okay. It's so cool. There you are a lot. An example of emotional imagination would be imagining, say, a 3-headed monster is real and actually feeling it. You know, when you go to a movie and you actually get sucked in. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, but I go to a movie and I'm totally sucked in. And I actually believe everything that anyone's doing if they're decent actors on the screen. But that's an emotional imagination. I did have to put that in. Memory reconstruction is using your imagination to fill in the gaps of your thoughts. We all do that. You can't really recall memories as well as you think, so your mind is filling in the blanks. That's memory reconstruction. And we do it based on our worldview, which I think is pretty awesome too. And then the last one is dreams. And that is an unconscious type of imagination that we can use as a source of inspiration. And I have a dream journal. I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and talk into my microphone or sing something. You should hear my phone messages. I'm singing like this in the middle of the night. It's really silly. All right. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting. I thought it was pretty cool. So the next slide. When speaking about imagination, this is the guy that comes to mind for me, Neville Goddard. Are any of you familiar with Neville Goddard? He has many YouTube videos online, and Neville was a pioneer in New Thought. And he wrote a book even called The Power of Imagination. Imagination was what was synonymous with God. I mean, he really, really talks about the power of the creative process in our imagination. According to Neville Goddard, imagination and faith are the secrets of creation. And I agree with him. He also said, an awakened imagination works with a purpose. It creates and conserves the desirable and transforms or destroys the undesirable. And that is a powerful message. So our imagination can be a tool to use along with our power of ability to create desirable thoughts or disempower or transform the unwanted ones. We can put these two things together. In the words of Neville Goddard, next slide, the world in which we live is a world of imagination, and man, through his imaginal activities, creates the realities and the circumstances of life. This he does either knowingly or unknowingly. All men possess the power to create reality, but this power sleeps when not consciously exercised. Men live in the very heart of creation, the human imagination. Exercising our imagination can lead to creativity, innovative solutions, overcoming blocks, or just igniting the child within us. Which brings me to our beloved Unity co-founder, Charles Fillmore, who says, it is the childlike mind that finds the kingdom. So I link our imagination with that freedom we had as a child. And when we add the power of mastery to that, the sky is the limit. We can create heaven on earth. We can create our divine purpose. When I was a little girl, I loved to dance and sing. And I would dress up in my grandmother's house. I would make costumes, of course, for all my cousins. We would dress up and do shows for my uncles who were working in the woods when they'd come home for lunch. They're all in their khakis, and I'm doing my little fantasy shows. It was pretty hilarious. But that never stopped. I'm still doing that today. And that was my childhood, right? So if we take a look back this week, think about the things that made you get up in the morning, the things you got excited about, the childlike qualities. They're very linked to our divine nature, to who we truly are. I followed that passion. And the main reason that we lose this imagination as we get older is that we learn to believe the world around us and to believe what is or isn't possible by the world's standards. And that's not the truth. When you're a child, you think you can become a ballerina, you'll dance around the living room and you'll see yourself being a ballerina. But as you grow up, that childhood dream might have less value because you don't imagine it as often. It's just like your organs. You have to use them. The organs that you use the most become powerful. The organs that you use less become weaker. Your imagination needs to be used. I want you to use it this whole week. So simply said, our imagination and feeling for wonder weaken due to lack of use. If we lose our sense of awe and wonder or stop using our imagination, which is sometimes one of the first things we let go of, then we have stifled our natural state of curiosity and joy. My first Unity teacher and mentor, Dr. Sue Sicking at Unity by the Sea, said, "Let us learn to dream dreams and have visions of beauty and wonder beyond all we have seen or read about." I say, let's become curious children again. We can use our abilities to transform any belief or thought. We can even turn a fear-filled heart into a trusting and loving one. We can turn a failed business into a prosperous and successful one. And we can even turn a gutted, rundown house into a dream home. So as our co-founder Charles Fillmore also said, the highest and best work of imagination is the marvelous transformation that it works in character. Imagine that you are one with the principle of good, and you will become truly good. There's no mistaking it. And I'll leave you this one last message from Neville, because it's really cool. You are, at this very moment, drawing into your world that which you are now conscious of being. If you're dissatisfied with your present expression in life, the only way to change it is to take your attention away from that which seems so real to you and rise in consciousness to that which you desire to be. You cannot serve two masters. Therefore, to take your attention from one state of consciousness and place it upon another is to die to one and live to the other. Let us live the life of our dreams. If we can imagine it and master our thoughts, anything that holds us back, we can taste the sweet fruit in the garden of our lives. Thank you. Keep imagining. Love you.